Hey guys, so amongst the millions of videos that have come out, spoiler-free and spoiler-filled videos of Avengers Infinity War, I decided that I would once again take on the feat of navigating these waters as best I can without going too spoilery, and give my sort of video out there despite the millions of videos that this is going to get buried underneath. So if you're here, thank you very much for watching. Now, reviews often praise or berate their subject matter, and Avengers Infinity War is no different. It is very much praised. However, there are some that think that it's maybe not as living up to the hype as it could have been, because this is 10 years of filmmaking coming together, and really they're supposed to blow the doors off, and they definitely did. But there's some things I have issues with, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But before we get into that, this is going to be my best version of a non-spoiler review. I'm going to try and leave as minimal spoilers out of here as possible, even though it's been out for a while, and it's the highest grossing movie of all time on opening weekend. It's still sort of, people haven't seen it, so best not take the chance. And before anybody gets too butthurt about what I may be saying in this video, these are simply my opinions and how I interpreted what was presented to me. I've only seen the film once, so it's really not like live or die, the final end-all be-all of Avengers Infinity War. I think there's a lot to be desired, but I think it was also really good, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, as I said, Avengers Infinity War is the culmination of 10 years of cinematic filmmaking and really the birth of the big superhero boom and fever, at least in movies anyway. And then I feel like the real boom didn't really start until about 6 years ago with the Avengers in 2012 that really got this train moving, mainly because, number one, that's the first time we actually got sort of a tease of Thanos, as well as all these characters coming together. So it was really when they realized, wow, all of these characters can share a universe, let's go for it, and they absolutely did. And 10 years later, here we are with, I think, a movie of like 60-something characters, which is absolutely insane, but it still works in a lot of ways. But in case you're one of the few that have not yet seen Infinity War or do not really know the story of it, it's essentially the story of the fate of the universe is now at stake once again by the mad titan Thanos, and it's up to the disassembled and very much scattered Avengers to come together once again and try and stop him. Now, I probably know what you're thinking right about now based on the title of this video. You're thinking, how dare this guy try and speak ill of the Goliath that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that is not what I'm doing, not whatsoever. I'm actually very much praising a lot of what they've done over the past 10 years and even accomplished in this movie alone. This movie very much works with a great, absolutely fantastic villain of Thanos, has a wonderful backstory that works way better than 90% of the rest of the MCU, but there's just certain things that were left to be desired and certain things that I felt like could have been tweaked or improved to make it a much better and even more badass movie. Now let's get into the movie itself. Let's first start with the directing. The Russo brothers hands down know what they're doing with these characters and how to bring a bunch of characters together and still sort of give each one their moment to shine. They're really, really good at that. Now, the directing was really awesome, but the reliance on CG, although this one is very CG heavy, a lot of times you see how good the CG really is, and then when you see bad CG and compare it to that, you sort of are just baffled by how bad CG can be sometimes, especially in this modern day. But Marvel really came out with this excellent CG. But there's a couple caveats to that. Number one being Iron Man. I feel like since the original Iron Man, progressively, every single time we see Iron Man, he just looks worse CG-wise. He just looks much more fake, and it's just not believable whatsoever. They need to use some sort of practical effects for Iron Man in order for me to believe it. They just go full CG, put him, Robert Downey Jr. in pajamas, we'll fix it later, and that I don't think is a good idea. Although Iron Man may move certain ways that maybe Robert Downey Jr. can't in a fully mechanized suit, whatever you want to call it, I feel like there needs to be that practicality to make it a little bit more believable and have some weight to it. Same issue sort of happens with Spider-Man, especially when he gets the Iron Spider suit. It just becomes so unbelievable that it doesn't really work for me. I love the idea of the nanotech with that sort of suit idea. That was awesome. However, they just look so fake. And even there's some portions of Thanos, even though his CG is amazing for the most part, I believe this can be a living, breathing character. I feel like there's just certain points where he's just disproportionate. Like, I don't know where his head looks smaller than the rest of his body, or his ears look really small, or they look very different, varying sizes. I don't know, maybe that was just me based on how I saw the movie or certain things that I was looking at or noticing, but some things just didn't quite add up with the CG that left me a little bit disappointed and took me a bit out of the movie. But other than that, it was pretty freaking awesome. Now, as for the acting, again, it was pretty awesome. There was a lot of these characters who have been doing these particular characters for nearly 10 years or 10 years plus, with Robert Downey Jr. being the main character, start kicking it off with Iron Man way back in 2008. These actors know these characters extremely well, especially with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. I think they're really evolving into their own sort of person, combining the actor with the character. It just creates this unique, that character just based on a look, or even based on a shadow, because there's a portion with Captain America where that's him just because of his shadow, and Chris Evans is going to walk out of there. And it's so awesome that they've embodied these characters, and they hands down do a great job. Now, Josh Brolin did fantastic as Thanos. I'm really looking forward to see how he does with Cable and Deadpool 2, but he really brought a life to Thanos. He had that great emotion, that great character work. I'm not entirely sure if he was fully on set during his scenes, doing like a motion capture sort of thing. Not entirely sure how that worked, but it was really awesome that he breathed this life into this character, and he did a fantastic job. There were some characters, though, even though there's just so many of them, felt like they didn't get any time, especially with being so popular. Main example of that is Black Panther. Now, Black Panther did just get his own movie. However, based on marketing and a very key moment happening in Wakanda, the place where Black Panther is from, he's really not in the movie that much. And it was a little bit disappointing because they really could have worked with it, especially with the major popularity. However, him being sort of a newcomer, I have to take it sort of with a grain of salt that they didn't really know how well he'd play, and they probably already shot the movie. Having to do reshoots would be super expensive. I totally get it. But I feel like they very much underutilized Black Panther. Even more of his side characters got a lot more time than actually he did. But I feel like T'Challa could have used a little bit more screen time. Same thing with a little bit with Spider-Man. He did have some fair moments, I'm not going to lie, but I feel like he could have been a little bit more utilized. And again, he needs to get rid of the umbilical cord between him and Tony Stark at some point. That's for another time, and I've probably discussed it in other videos. But I feel like a lot of the characters did do a fantastic job. Great sense of humor between a lot of the characters. Great chemistry, especially being between characters that we don't normally see team up or didn't expect to team up. Very much with Thor and Rocket. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy and sort of Tony Stark had that sort of back and forth a little bit. Tony Stark and Doctor Strange. There was a lot of unique chemistry that kind of worked to a lot of benefits here. And they did a great job, and you could really tell that a lot of these characters were having fun, or at least building that chemistry for future franchises to be connected, depending on who lives, of course. Now, the story and the editing is where things start to get complicated and choppy. Now, the story was absolutely fantastic, and the battle sequences were hands down jaw-dropping and had you on the edge of your seat, at least for me anyway. But I feel like there were some instances that because these stories were happening simultaneously across the cosmos, Guardians of the Galaxy in space with Thor and Rocket and all of those characters, Iron Man starts heading into space, and then there's all the ground characters with Captain America, Black Panther, Black Widow, Falcon, all those characters are on the ground in Wakanda. And sort of we get back and forth, and Vision and Scarlet Witch are sort of doing their own thing, but also come down to Wakanda. There's a bunch of things happening, and it jumps around so frequently that sometimes you forget, oh yeah, there's a big battle happening on Earth, or they'll cut right, not necessarily in the middle of it, but either at a joke or some battle sequence moment like swords clashing or whatever it could be, and then we jump back into space. It felt very disjointed. Like I was very into what was just happening. Let's play it out and see where it goes. But at the same time, I have to think that these are simultaneously happening. So of course I'm worried about if Thor is going to get done with his stuff in time to be able to get back to Earth to help Captain America and Black Panther to fight all the sort of beings and the Black Order that Thanos has sent down. And they're just so disjointed. And then there's the third element of the triangle, which is Thanos, who has sort of his own storyline going on that sort of intermingles with the Avengers. It kind of gets complicated, and it's hard to watch sometimes because right in the middle, something breaks and you go back to Thanos, or you go back to space, or you go back to Wakanda. It's just this triangle game of trying to figure out where we're going to go next and really what's the most important element. But it feels like so amazing at the same time. It's hard to speak ill of it because it's just so awesome. And I think that a lot of the battle sequences especially very much reminded me of Lord of the Rings, and actually the whole film itself reminded me of Lord of the Rings, the first one, Fellowship of the Ring, because number one, the awesome battle sequences, well, that was more later in the Lord of the Rings stuff. I'm not a big Lord of the Rings person, but the big battles very much reminded me of Lord of the Rings, and it was epic and awesome. And then there was the way that it sort of ends, which I really don't want to get into without spoiling, that it very much reminded me of Fellowship of the Ring, because when I first saw Fellowship of the Ring, I had no idea that it was part of a trilogy. I just thought, Lord of the Rings, cool, let's go see it. And when Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring ended, I had no clue what was going on because it just sort of ended and I was just like, what? And that's kind of how Infinity War left me. I felt like it didn't really end even though it had an ending. And although it is extremely sad in some portions, I don't know how to feel about it because I feel like so many things have problems in this sort of universe and this storyline. But at the same time, I feel like there's a caveat that makes me not believe it or invest in it. And that is the Time Stone. The Time Stone can fix everything or 90% of what just happened. And we know that a lot of them are coming back because caveat number 2, they released the release schedule way ahead of time. So we know Black Panther's getting a sequel. We know Spider-Man's getting a sequel. We know Guardians is getting a sequel. There's so many things that are having part 2s, part 3s, whatever, come out that have these characters that sort of disappear, die, whatever you want to call it, like not show up at all. And you know that they're having movies come out, so I'm not invested in it because I know they're going to come back or show back up. And I feel like that's kind of disappointing that I don't believe in it because I know there's going to be more coming and it's all going to be fixed by Avengers 4. Now I'm going to stop myself right there because I don't want to spoil any more of Infinity War than I probably already just did, and to that I very much apologize. But I feel like there's just so much to talk about, and it's so hard to make a review without really talking about those big moments, or at least sort of disclosing those little things. Like even I was pretty much spoiler free leading up to watching Avengers Infinity War. There were spoilers that I saw on the internet, but because it didn't have the context behind it, I didn't feel spoiled. There were certain things that just didn't spoil for me because I didn't have that context. So I was kind of lucky in a way, but hopefully I didn't spoil it too much for you, and hopefully you'll see it soon so you can kind of comment on the video later. But anyway, overall I feel like Infinity War had a lot of great stuff going for it, but there's just little things about it that just bug me, and I know can be fixed in Avengers 4, which we're going to have to wait till 2019 to come out in order to get answers. That's going to be frustrating, but regardless, I think that the overall grade that I have to give Avengers Infinity War is a B+. Although I do have to admit it was a fantastic and spectacular movie, it did leave me a little bit disappointed because of the ending and things that I know that can be fixed for Avengers 4 in 2019 that we're going to sort of steamroll into the next phase of Marvel. And I feel like there's just so many things that just missed the mark just slightly enough that it bothered me. But I feel like this movie was meant to scratch the itch of what we're going to get in Avengers 4. I feel like that this grade will probably skyrocket for me once Avengers 4 comes out and you kind of get the context of what happened in Infinity War that sort of makes Avengers 4 make it even better. And I feel like that's it's just a stepping stone movie. It didn't feel like the epic event that Marvel and the marketing sort of led us to believe. But it's still a great movie, and I definitely recommend seeing it if you're one of the very few that probably have not yet. But definitely check it out if you have seen it. Make sure you leave the comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please don't dismember me for leaving any spoilers, because that was very difficult to do. Or just sort of, I'm not trashing Marvel. They did an amazing thing, but it could have been better, and they've done better. And I think they've raised the bar so high for themselves that it's difficult to sort of keep it always at that level or higher. And the stakes were supposed to be high for this, but it just missed the mark a little bit. But those are pretty much my thoughts on Avengers Infinity War. Other than that, that's all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Just so you know, I do plan on having several more videos come out. I'm not really focused on reviews right now, even though there's a ton of movies that I would like to review. I'm super behind because I just moved again. But there's other things that I want to focus my channel on and doing more videos about. Sort of explains videos, or these sort of weird theories, I guess, that I come up with that are probably not new, but they're new to me. So I would love to write it and then put it on camera for you guys. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. I know the lack of videos lately has been pretty low, but I'm probably going to try and produce a lot more content now that I have some actual ideas to go forward with. So make sure you subscribe, because I would really appreciate that. But other than that, that's all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.